Thank you for joining Once Changing the World, India's first Future Tech Meets Sustainability podcast. And today, delighted and honored to have with me Dr. Swaroop Mishra, who's ex Google Brain and currently the senior research scientist at Google DeepMind, where he works on Gemini reasoning. He and his team built a system that received a silver medal at the International Mathematical Olympiad. He also co-led reasoning research that contributed to the successful launch of the state-of-the-art reasoning Gemini model at Google I/O 2024. His research contributions are on instruction tuning and reasoning methods, including natural instructions, supernatural instructions, reframing, question decomposition, math via programs, help me think, and instruction bias. He is a co-organizer of the Math AI workshops at NeurIPS 2022 and NeurIPS 2024. His work on natural instructions has recently received the AI to Lasting Impact Paper Award. So, Sarup, really appreciate you taking time and being part of the podcast. You come from a very humble background. What kind of nudged you to pick up AI as a track? And maybe you can give us the journey right from Google Brain to right now Google Gemini.
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me. I've seen your podcast and really informative content to create awareness among the public. Now, regarding me, I was very inspired by our own Indian scientists like Aryabhat, Ramanujan, and all these people who I dreamt of in my childhood. During schooling, I used to study about their life and how they invented stuff. Um, and I always believed in thinking across the line into the textbook. It's not just marks, but how can we find some connection? The original motivation was to do well in some of the competitive exams, right? Like Olympiad and those kind of stuff. But when I went deeper and deeper, I could find out some connections, and it realized that if you want to solve some of these complex questions or some of the hard questions, which are beyond textbook knowledge. So textbook exercise probably come from what is in the textbook itself. But if you want to solve something outside, you have to think. And learning unsupervised, like learning directly trying to solve those problems, I feel like that brings some kind of creativity because you don't know how to proceed, but you have to proceed. I think those things really help me, um, and then especially physics. I used to love physics and math. Back in high school, and that when I was trying to solve some of these hard questions, I felt that there's a connection between a lot of different physics concepts as well as the mathematical world, and that sort of like curiosity to know what is there led me to study a lot of things on my own. And also I've been fortunate to be supported by many research institutes pretty young in my career, and that helped me a lot in that time I built this theory. I used to call that theory of everything, but it's like connecting different physics concepts. But I really passionate that the things which govern the world probably they cannot be very different from each other. There has to be a relation between different concepts, right? um, and then that was like fascinating to me. Like we study different laws like Newton's laws, Ohm's law, like starting with I'm talking about my mindset back then. Like are they really different, like Newton's laws, Ohm's laws, and all these different physics concepts, and back and in the other literature what we study, and then extending beyond science to economics, arts, and even like why you like a music versus why you don't like a music. Like anything you see, there has to be a connection. That was my belief, and I think mm, I was trying to make that theory, and then but that was like a long time back. This is before my undergrad and those days. And that time also during my undergrad, I got a chance to visit Harish Chandra Research Institute. It's now in Allahabad, Prayagraj. It's one of the very fine fundamental research institute in India. And I got a chance to work with some of the like pioneering physics researchers that gave the early exposure. But then from there, until I came to know about AI, like especially neural networks, and this happened at IIT Kanpur. So my teacher advisor, Professor Behra, who is now director in IIT Mandi, so he was teaching this neural network course, like how artificial neural network work, inspired by human neural network. And immediately, I saw a spark, like there's a connection between what I was trying to do earlier, because in all these neural networks, in this AI, we're trying to build a theory or a mechanism to explain different physical phenomena, which is otherwise difficult to describe using laws or handwritten formulas and all those things. Because, like, we have this generic neural network. You can study computer vision, you can study natural language processing, speech, or any of this domain. Um, that's very fascinating to me. It's like, wait, is not what I'm trying to prove back in the days without knowing about this? So that is where my curiosity increased towards this domain, and I then, of course, then during my PhD, I got a chance to explore more of these things. This is like 2017, 2018, when the 2017 the transformer paper came. It's like the revolution we see in the LLM world is driven by that. And of course, before that, 2013, there's AlexNet, ResNet, Inception, and many of this super cool work. And that led me to the belief that what I could not publish, even now, still now, till date, I have not published that physics theory. But there might be, this is the best place, the best avenue, because in computer science, and this AI field, it's very easy to, if you build something, it's very easy to test it. Unlike in physics, you need a, of course, Einstein's theory, Eddington has to come and, visualize and do the experiments and to prove those. And but in computer science, it's much easier because you have all the data, and especially in AI, and that actually really made me curious to get into this area. And and then in 2020, when GPT-3 came, this is like before Chat GPT, the GPT series, and before that, there are like BERT in 2018, T5, all these models. That was like the early LLM era. That time it used to call language model, and now it is like large language models. Um, and those days, the models were able to do some of these tasks pretty well, like writing or writing story or question answering. Many of these tasks, which is like super impressive. And that's actually most of the people, sort of most of the community. That time, the NLP community used to be very small. Machine learning predominantly meant computer vision and other applications. But that's the pivot point where most people started to work on, LLMs or AI. And the transformer, which came actually from natural language processing (NLP), that sort of revolutionized the AI because everywhere, the computer vision, speech, RL, all these areas where people are using other kinds of architecture, they actually moved to transformers. And transformer came from Google Brain, you know, 2017. And there was this Lambda, that is the chatbot. That time it's like pretty early. All these things, and all these popular researchers whose book I studied, who inspired me in this field. They were like, I always look forward to join Google Brain. Like many of these innovations you see, actually, most of the innovations you see across different labs, they have some connection or other to Google Brain. So that definitely inspired me that, okay, maybe if I do some innovation, and that is probably the a good place to aim to learn as well as publish what I want to do. And then my this is during 2021. 2020 and 2021, I got a chance to work at Alin AI, Alin Institute for AI. It's a non-profit research institute, and there I could work on this instruction tuning paper, which is called Natural Instruction. Um, can talk about that in detail, but that sort of you know provided a medium for language models to talk to humans. It make it really interactive because traditionally the definition of machine learning is you have to train a model and then test it, but nobody has time to train, or like common people, like public, they don't know how to train a model. They don't know how to create data set, right? So that actually sort of opened the door, and what you saw in chat, Gemini, and many of this, like now everywhere, like people use, starting from kids to anyone who don't even know tech, they use this LLM. So and then yeah, and then part of the Google Brain, and then Google DeepMind, part of many of the critical launch, and many of the interesting projects, and that was super cool. And yeah, of course, as you mentioned, the silver medal we got in IMO is really proud of. We are really proud of it as a team. It's like a first of a kind. So yeah, it has been really a fascinating time to be in the space of AI.
Awesome. I mean, sort of thank you for sharing your journey, and your journey is so awesome. And I'm sure the listeners who are listening to it are going to be inspired because your journey comes from a very humble background, and you had a dream to push the boundaries of things and ask deeper questions. Largely, I think we go just rely on books in colleges, but I think, I mean, maybe your mind wanted you to get out, ask deeper question. And I think that's where things starts. I personally don't have a background in education. I've dropped out of college. I've just done 11th standard. But I think curiosity keeps me going. I constantly keep on looking, learning from experiences, live experiences, I mean, from music, from the world, from books, from podcasts, because there's so much knowledge out there. And I think, I mean, books, obviously, they are great, colleges, institutions, they are great, but I think we need to dig deeper because I think the world is so beautiful and there's so much, like you mentioned, the physics and maths. I think everything is so interlinked. Physics itself, I want to dig into that because I mean it's so awesome. There's four fundamental forces of nature: strong energy, weak nuclear energy force. Electromagnetism and gravity, and then all these atoms, these atoms, when they kind of come together, they bring about everything, the universe, the entire universe. And I've been always kind of think, okay, how does that happen? How do these atoms kind of come together and bring about everything, from the star, sun, moon, us, everything, so very interesting. I want to get into the physics, the maths. I want to get into the paper that you did at Allen Institute, the natural instructions paper. But before that, I wanted your thoughts and your views on the Indian education system, because the Indian education system is great, but there's one side of it is like a pressure cooker, and there's also the rote learning system, but which I think it's changing. So I think will be great if you could share your thoughts on what are the challenges of India's education and innovation landscape, and are you concerned about the academia's closing access to critical papers, because it seems to be happening not just in academia but also in enterprise, because there are these large language models, and then there is this like battle between the proprietary closed models as well as open models, so what are your thoughts on India's education system, innovation systems? Are you concerned about academia closing its access to critical papers, and the open versus closed system? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, very interesting question. Regarding the Indian education system, of course, I'm grateful to Indian education system. We all came from there. We got where we are because of the Indian education system, and I'm happy to see that it is changing. But I feel like one of the opportunity is the difference, which I feel is focus too much on the marks, or and lack of examples. The thing is, like, it is very easy to be satisfied, in getting a good job, or where is the need for innovation in the exams? So that is what um, brings an opportunity to improve it. Because say, why do a student has to innovate if he or she is like topping the exam and doing really well and getting a good job and what they want, and then as part of the course curriculum, the way it is designed, where is the scope to bring the thinking from first principles or original thinking? This is like many of these innovations actually come from thinking from first principle, or like thinking really original. But I don't think any of these exams and or the interviews and all the way these are conducted, there is not a good metric. And I also understand that it's not easy for like such a huge population to come up with a metric. Is It's not really um, it's really difficult to make it work. But I feel like there are two problems. One is like the incentives to innovate. Actually, in our system, the incentive can be negative. If somebody innovate but doesn't do well in the exam, I mean, they cannot get admission in a good school, or they have a hard time finding a job unless somebody is like really smart and that they invent something and that becomes a product. Um, so that is one thing. Like you have to, and the curriculum is like keeps you busy all the time. Like a lot of work on writing, following instruction and all those things. So I think we need to add more such incentive systems. And the second is like lack of examples. Like I said, I mentioned at the beginning, we're really proud of like Aryabhat, Ramanujan, but this like generation before, who really that a great deed of innovation. But you also want to see more such examples that it's not just building a big industry and raise money and all those things, but also and not always do something after something has been proven to be working in the West or somewhere else. But trying to set an example, and and I'm actually happy that things are actually changing, and especially government is very keen. You know, recent days it has been there's a lot of interest and a lot of incentives, so I'm sure things are going to change.
Any thoughts on the closed and open source models?
So there's a trade-off, because as AI get more and more powerful, if we make everything open, should we do that? Is it ethically correct? I mean, it can go in the hands of people who have negative intention, right? I mean, it's like the same debate. Do we want to open source nuclear science? Probably not, right? So similarly, AI models are not at that level yet, but yes, they are improving very fast, right? So that also brings some of the safety concerns and policy concerns. And of course, the business being attached to it is like it becomes proprietary because they're no more in research. Like today's research goes to product tomorrow, like very tightly coupled. If you solve a research problem, you get business benefits straight away. So, so it's like for practical reasons, there is a gap, and the gap is unfortunate for people in academia, because to be able to do research, first thing is to know what problems to solve. If you don't know what problem to solve, I mean, the time is being getting wasted, right? So that's actually unfortunate for people in academia. But at the same time, it gives an opportunity to basically ask some of the fundamental questions which probably industry might not ask in the near time horizon, because it's like too expensive or too risky. For example, changing something very basic, right? Like transformer has been few years old, and can you change the transformer architecture? Can you change the back propagation? Can you develop a better optimizer? Some of these fundamental questions, or like develop a physics-inspired neural network, because the basics of the network has remained the same, right? Biologically plausible neural network. Some of these things, like more interesting, more crazy research stuff, that also brings an opportunity for academia to lead. and I'm sure there are some people who are working in the direction.
You rightfully pointed out, I think the students over here are trying to copy or ape what the West is doing. I'm not saying that's a wrong approach, but I think there is so much that can be done if we push students to think from first principles. Because I guess when students come out, I think the primary driver or motivation is money. And I think we live in a world where there is, I think, lots of money, but as well as lots of problems. But I think students keep on going towards the problem which 90% is already doing it. I think there is more requirement of people or the students to think out of the box, and I hope that happens. And that's when I think India truly will get these big tech company which are like really solving those big problems rather than waiting for the West to do it, and and then aping that. Of the open and closed source conversation, I think obviously we need both of them, and somehow for the first time in human history, we getting a tech stack which is self-learning. And I think proprietary close stage closed source models are also not so good, because having a centralized AI would always lead to a terrible consequence where it could just lead to a surveillance state. I hope that we go into a world which is a little bit more decentralized, so that the accessibility of these fantastic tech is more equitable rather than being held by a central entity. You have a physics background. Uh, there is Max Tegmark, who's written a book that the universe is completely mathematical. You have been, in the early days working on the theory of everything, and then you just mentioned that people should be building physics-inspired neural network. Can you elaborate on the role of physics in building general-purpose artificial intelligence, and also your theory of everything?
Yes, totally. So first of all, there is this observation what I've seen is when you do research, when you try to invent something, if we get try to look, if you're looking for inspiration from the existing literature or by looking at others' works, there is a problem because that will not lead a breakthrough or a step function based change. Because if you are reading other people's work, and trying to look for inspiration from them, um, the ideas which we'll get is probably an incremental on existing works or a composition of existing works, and it's not truly novel. And that means some of these great ideas may come from other literature, not within AI and outside AI. And people have different interests depending on what they like. For example, some of this popular deep learning researcher, they get inspiration from neuroscience. Some people get inspiration from medical domain, some people from cognitive science and all these things. And physics is my personal choice. It's just I liked physics from the beginning. And then I saw a connection because in neural network, it's sort of like a universal modeling method, right? You try to model everything with neural network, and similar for physics, right? There is one law that worked across multiple different concepts, right? And multiple different domains. Such a beautiful, right? Um, and that actually is where I find it really interesting to get ideas from physics and try to use it for AI. In my case, um, like I mentioned, my main goal was to solve hard physics problems, which I'm not able to solve, but I was trying to solve in an unsupervised way. Like there is a question, there is no solution. And so when you are solving a supervised way, for example, when you go to coaching, when you study from a teacher, you follow the method, what is the standard method, which or proven method, right? But when you are trying in an unsupervised way, it can go either way. Either you can, come up with something really new, or you just fail because you never reach the solution, right? sort of like reinforcement learning in life, you know. And that's sort of what I did is like take these different physics concepts from 12th, 11th, and 12th, and trying to combine them with a single theory to say that, you know, I wanted to remember less. I didn't want to memorize less formulas. That means if you can connect all of them and try to come up with a single theory, that means you can derive everything on the fly. You don't have to memorize. You have to memorize less, and that was the inspiration. And but it's like, of course, only scope towards the problems which we know in 11th and 12th. Even then, not all physics concepts. Some of the physics concepts is like more um, popular at that time. Um, and then, yeah, I wrote this. I have this still this handwritten book of like 150 pages. They call as my version of theory of everything, where I basically describe, yeah, how these different physics concepts are related. But as you know, like publishing some of these things is just like it's not very easy because physics has moved. There are like a lot of string theory, quantum field theory, all these theories are there, and then you have to be in that area to be able to compete and compare against those theories. So, which requires a physics background and other things. But I'm hopeful that at some point we'll have an AI which can learn all these things and take these ideas and then automatically compare and come up with a new theory, and that will be like the AI researcher.
Wow. Yeah. So I think, yes, what's lacking in the current LLMs is an understanding of the world model. The top researchers are kind of, trying to integrate that. There is Dr. Fei Li with World Labs who believes that spatial intelligence is truly required, the 3D world, to kind of understand our world. And that's when maybe possibly an embodiment, there are ones who are working on towards robotics are feeling that embodiment is the approach to kind of truly build these general purpose machines. What are your thoughts on India? Because there are lots of startups and even the government who's kind of supporting to build these language models, but unfortunately we don't have a single foundational model here in India as of now. What are your thoughts? I mean, does a nation require, like a nation like India, does it require to build a foundational model? And what could be the challenges and opportunities over there?
And the question is why there has not been startup. First of all, this technology is pretty new, and like you say, you mentioned earlier, like our tendency has been wait for something to be proven by outsiders, and then when it works, we typically follow. It's not always, but most of the time, probably that's like sort of a easier path to take. And LLMs were like not that powerful. Were not that powerful until recently, where there seems like there's like to be a breakthrough. And but then I'm really proud of some of this effort, which is, so one of them I want to call out is Sarvam AI. They're actually doing pretty cool work, and then at least I see there are people, the new generation, they have interest, not just to earn money or not just to get a good job or get a good business, but also curiosity driven, trying to build stuff of their own. There's a change in mindset, and there's some people who are definitely trying to build the indigenous language model, not just using for Indian language, but also maybe they'll also come to some technique that everybody else outside will also adapt. It can also start in everything. There's definitely a change in mindset, but it takes time. Like you mentioned also, it has been how the tendency has been. So it will take some time, and I'm sure government, they also must have their plans and incentive systems to encourage such things. Um, the other thing is IITs. I think IITs also have the responsibilities, the educational institute, to be to do research on cutting edge stuff, and stay closer to where the innovation is happening. Because, you know, publishing is one thing, people publish so many papers. Every day, so many papers are published, right? But how many of those papers are really effective, or those should be, you know, is really advancing the field? Very few, right? I think so. And we should also have this flexible system. For example, if somebody really is smart and publish one good paper, we should let them graduate, be it in 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, get a degree. Why they have to? I mean, they have to finish all their requirements, curriculum. Then where is the time to? And why should somebody even think of doing this? Like, because they have to follow the count, they have to publish X number of papers, clear the exams and all those things. I think there has to be this kind of system. And some of the schools in US definitely have this kind of system that if you do well, things can be expedite, things can be pretty fast and more convenient. So yeah, the good news is things are changing in India, and I'm definitely hopeful.
Right, right. Can you talk about your paper on natural instructions and also your work on supernatural instructions? And it would be great if you can elaborate on how will that fundamentally change AI's reasoning capabilities.
Back in the day, we always wanted to build a dialogue system. You know, the dialogue system is like, can an AI talk to human, communicate, answer questions, um, all these kinds of stuff. But the technology that time, where the basics of machine learning is, as the name says, machine learning is machine need to learn. And if machine need to learn, somebody has to teach, right? That's the basic premise, that you have to teach. And so what happened is that actually kept the application limited to experts, to labs. The people are doing machine learning and AI back then, but only the experts. They're only interacting. There are all these models, but only researchers, only the experts they used to interact. Now, to be able to build an AI that is accessible for everyone, everybody can benefit from it. We need to give this capability for everybody to be able to teach to a machine, or like use machine learning without knowing any of these technical details about machine learning and all, right? And that's how like Google search is powerful, because you can ask any question to Google search. You don't need to know, you don't need to have a background or anything, right? And that was the motivation. But then the in the to take the side of the traditional machine learning, um, if you let people ask what they want to ask, they can ask anything and everything, right? Now, how do you get ready for that? mm, and because even humans don't know everything, right? Like, I mean, if you ask something from history, I don't remember. We need some other stuff to look into, or some other help. But then the idea there was the natural instruction paper, you know that time. um, So I had this slide where I explained that, say, this local game called Gilli Danda back in India. We play that game. And how we play that game is, a friend explains that game in one or two lines, and you probably see somebody else playing, and you just learn from it directly. Right? We don't need to see like hundreds of people playing to really learn that game. We learn it very fast, right? And one of the hypotheses could be, the reason we learn that game very fast is probably we visualize that game as a combination of some of the games we already know, like cricket or soccer, and that's probably why we learn it super fast. And that is the idea. We want to take it and put it in AI. Like, if humans do that, to learn things faster. Now, what does that mean to be doing the same for AI? What if we create a lot of different small tasks, just like cricket, soccer, and all these different sports, right? We create this different AI tasks and encode instruction with the task to let the model learn from instruction at training time, just like we learn cricket, soccer, and all those things from instruction. Then at test time, any task come, if your training tasks are like big, like n number of games or n number of stuff, any task, any test task come, there might be some overlap with known task, right? Maybe 20% of, like that game, Build and Rest, like some cricket, some soccer, like some whatever you ask, there might be some overlap with the task you already know. And these models are pretty good at generalizing, doing extrapolation, interpolation, and all those things. So they can do this composition. And that was the main idea. That was the key idea, like inspired by a physical, phenomenon of a game, how people play that game, and how can we really build powerful machines. And that's sort of like the concept now popularly known as instruction tuning, where you can just like you ask any question to Chat GPT or Gemini, just immediately give you an answer. You don't need to train a model, right? But because the model has been trained on so many tasks along with instruction, it can just generalize and do some kind of extrapolation, and it can learn this task. So that was the paper. That is 2021 natural instruction, and that actually sort of then instruct GPT came, and then that was also being used in chat. That actually gave rise to Chat GPT, the instruct GPT world. And then there was like Flan from Google, that later become used in Bard and Gemini. All this thing happened, but one of the thing now the second part, supernatural instruction, right? So one of the thing which is really crucial to AI researcher is scaling. Like scaling is like our the most important thing in deep learning or AI, because the thing is humans have say limited memory or limited computation. Human need to take rest, they get tired, they need to eat and all those things. But machines do not have to take rest, they can just work. And that means if you find a solution that scales, and I can basically give a task to machine for like few days with a lot of compute. If I find out that by adding those compute or adding more machines, the question is going to be solvable, um, that is like perfect. That's why scaling is really important. So in natural instruction, we had around 61 tasks. Remember, I mentioned more the task you have, better it is. Like more the coverage you have, better your capability to learn new tasks on the fly. So we start this scaling law. We have this curve in the paper. In the plot, you see that as you increase the number of tasks, as you increase the diversity of the task, the model performance just keeps increasing and increasing to unseen tasks. That is like really fascinating. That's like the best thing to see for a AI researcher, something which is scaling. You know? So that means the next step is, if this is scaling well, let's keep scaling. You know, just like physics, simple, elegant solutions that only works. Nothing like super fancy, super complicated. Simple, elegant, but scales well. That really scales well. So we saw that this is happening. So the immediate step is how we can collect more tasks. That's what the next or supernatural instruction came in. We expanded from 61 to 1600 tasks, and this across multiple domain and multiple languages. Some of the Indian languages are also there, and that actually happened across more, like more than a year with a big collaboration. I actually opened it up um, to anyone who wants to submit their task. It's sort of like not only you do that stuff, but also empower everybody and let them participate by submitting their task. At the same time, they get the paper or whatever recognition from our side, and that's how supernatural instruction happened, where we scaled up from 61 to 1600 tasks, and the model became stronger and stronger. Yeah, that's the story.
Right. Right. Talking about scaling, I mean, on the stick over there, these LLMs, they are the statistical models, but they are showing something which is really, I mean, sometimes unbelievable, right from these emergent properties of these LLMs to recently Anthropic spoke about the models faking alignment. Uh, what are your thoughts on the scaling thing? Do you think, because there are a lot of people who believe that just scaling these LLM models could lead to AGI? I mean, is this something that you believe in?
Yes, that is like sort of rule number one of AI researcher, that we believe in scaling. At least most of us, we believe in scaling, but it's ambiguous. Like what scaling in what dimension? Scaling, of course, even for say any of the problems we have, say what we do. Like if you want to finish a work of a construction of a bridge, if it is not going at the pace we want, we add more people, right? To just scale number of people, right? Or if we're not happy with the house we're staying, we scale money to get a bigger house, right? So it's same, right? Like again, or in physics, or in these are all inspired from daily life, right? We scale in different aspects, right? And we believe the same for machines, that what is, like, just like, um, to find out the law of the universe or the law of computation, to really learn this task, we need to scale. Now, how to scale, which dimension to scale, that is the big stuff. That is what people have been trying to figure out ever since, you know if you go a little bit to the history, back in the old days of machine learning in AI, people used to write handwritten rules, you know, come up with the handwritten rules. But human handwritten rules, the imagination might be limited. So there is like machines to sort of like scaling, like a cloning multiple brains to sort of help you in coming up with rules. And then there is this feature engineering. You keep on scaling feature, and then you give the duty responsibility to the compute, like a big neural network that can sort of, and you keep on scaling that neural network so it can automatically come up with feature. Scaling has been happening in the history, and it's not very different, in my view, of how we deal things in daily life. But what aspect we should scale, that is the big research question. Just scaling compute blindly won't lead to AGI, and just scaling data also won't lead to AGI. It's not like at the current pace, if you just keep scaling what you are doing without an innovation, there will be no AGI. So it's also like the definition of AGI is sort of ambiguous, right? Like, what is AGI? We need to actually define that first. In my view, we had this very interesting discussion on this at NeurIPS, which happened in last month, and there's like interesting panel discussion happened. But so the way I see AGI is when a model is as good as average humans. I'm not saying experts, like average human, they can write a story, write a poem, write an email, write some code. So when a model is as good as average humans, and you can do it reliably, it's not like model can do that, but if you ask what is 2 plus 3, model cannot do that. So it should be able to do it reliably. And I think there are still some algorithmic advances that is required to be able to reach at the stage.
It's very difficult to understand because our brains, it's got 80 billion neurons, 100 trillion synapses. The way they fire and wire brings out five senses and intellect, reasoning capabilities and everything. We don't at all require so much data. It functions with just 20 watts of energy. And even if you see something once or twice, I mean, even a child kind of comprehends and remembers that this is what it's seeing. So it's not so much. It's something which it's very difficult to kind of fathom that maybe scaling could lead to AGI. And somehow, I mean, all the benchmarks of AGI, I mean, it's fallen apart, because there was a time we said that, like, a Turing test, if the AI can, conquer a Turing test, then that we have maybe general purpose machines. Then there was like, okay, if you can play, beat the world's best chess player, then maybe we have like AGI. That's also done. Then there was like, okay, if it does protein folding, okay, then we've got AGI. So where does it stop? Because I think we humans are always kind of creating these benchmarks. These benchmarks are being somehow crossed by these statistical models, which is just being fed in data. It's data in, data out. So it's very, very difficult to kind of fathom. What's your intuit on, like you mentioned, there would be specific things that's needed to scale to get to AGI. But you were at New Rips. I mean, you have Google Gemini. You having the conversation with the best minds. Is there some kind of intuit, some paper that you've read, or innovation that you've seen, which kind of makes you believe that, okay, we are close to AGI, and maybe this could be the approach to build AGI? Any thoughts on that?
First of all, like the examples you mentioned, like the Go or Turing test and all these things. So there are like one important aspect to consider is the specialist task. a model that can beat a Go player, can the model be always as good as a mathematician in math? Probably not, right? I think what you are looking for is a generalist. We have we have achieved specialist. If you define AGI as a specialist, we have achieved that long back, right? I mean, AlphaGo moment happened and AlphaFold happened. All these are like specialist agent that can do specific tasks, and they can actually beat the human experts, get superhuman performance, right? But I think the question is generality, because as humans, like we can do a lot of different tasks, you know, easily, not just one task. Now, can you get this general intelligence, not just specific intelligence? Now, that is the big question. Um, Now, the discussion always has been, um, okay, how do you define the boundary of generality? Some people can say, wait, humans like somebody like as not every human is good at everything, right? Like maybe somebody is good at sports and probably coding, a little bit of housework, but they probably can dance, right? So that means like maybe we need to relax the definition a little bit, and you're looking at this like big use cases like writing code or like doing some creative task and all those things. If we narrow the boundary, if you narrow the scope, I think that's where things look very positive, at least in the immediate future, near future, within the next few years, right? And for that, now the learning algorithm, like of course data has to increase, but as you know, the data is like sort of upper bounded by the internet, right? Like internet is not growing as fast as we want, right? And and then now with this AI data coming into internet, that is sort of also contaminating the richness, because it's sort of like AI feeding its own data, right? So there is definitely a data scarcity. Like what? So if you ask this question to me, if you asked this question to me 5 years back, I would have said, because that time we are not even utilizing the whole of internet, right? That time it was like data scaling was the hot topic to do. It's like just keep on scaling data. If you ask this question 10 years back, when the Alex moment happened, those guys would have told layer number of layers, scaling in the number of layers, and removing everything like feature and everything. That would be the right way to scale. But now where this stays, data is sort of limited. Data is being upper bounded by internet, and I mean compute is increasing. Compute is getting cheaper and cheaper. But then there are other innovations, like especially the algorithm part, right? How do we how do we train? Like what kind of learning algorithms should you use? How do you optimize different stuff? That's where I think probably the next big scaling law is going to come.
Right, right. You mentioned about these model general capabilities are growing. And there are these models that does code. I mean, 2025 is supposed to be the year of agentic models, where these agentic AIs will be doing quite a lot of things. I mean, do you think about the world? I mean, as in the ethical considerations of AI, what is that something which kind of worries you? Because I mean, last year your CEO Sundar Pichai mentioned that 25% of code is written by machines, and then there's I was just listening to a podcast, Peter Diamandis with Mark Benioff, the CEO at Salesforce, and then he was saying that they're building all these agentic AI models, and then they are not hiring software engineers anymore. What are the like the problem areas, when this kind of grows? What conversations do we actually need to have? Because I don't think that it's being reached out to the general public, because I think this conversation remains between people who are tech literate or maybe the curious lot, but then there's a 90% of the world who's like completely unaware about this like volcano of sorts which is happening in the field of tech, which is truly magical and disruption. It could completely disrupt our world. Uh, what are the ethical considerations you think, as an AI researchers, should be kept in mind with these conversations, that in the next few years, you mentioned, there could be general purpose machines, that could be possible scientists, possible maybe mathematicians, possibly could do code better than any humans. So because uh, the dream was sold, the dream that was sold to us, the common people, was that the creative field would be the last to be touched, and then there would be humans there. We would be doing the creative jobs. But today there are these gen AI, text to image, text to video, text to gaming, text to world building. What remains for humans in the future? Would be great to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, very interesting, very deep question. The way I see it is, do humans need to work 5 days a week? Probably not. Maybe 3 days a week, 4 days a week. Um, Sort of like as a tool. Uh, I'll talk about three stages. The first is like immediate. It's like use it for improving the productivity. These days, every software engineer, they use this AI to debug, write code, you know, um, listening to people doing assignment in school. They use AI for their task. Definitely, it's helping to improve their productivity. And in a sense, if you see in one way, it is good in the sense like humans naturally are like, our job is to like be human, interact with nature, do other stuff, not just being a machine in front of another machine, like doing like work all the time. So that is like good, and humans talk to each other, they socialize, good for society. The second aspect is there is a change, and this change is sort of unavoidable. It is coming, but the thing is, it has always happened, right? Like there's like mechanical world where everybody thought like doing mechanical stuff is the best way to do things, and then when electrical world came, many of these things and sort of got replaced. And then when computer science came, many of this core work also got automated. There has been a change from mechanical world to electrical world, and automation came, and computer science and all those things. And people have always adapted, right? So, for example, back in the years, people used to do this very low level assembly language programming. Now, how many people even is sort of required to do those things? We don't know, right? But those like they used to be the hot job some time back, right? So I'm saying there is so sure, and then humans need to adapt. Like people need to adapt to different requirement. The positive side is, um, you know, that we can increase their productivity, stay more human, do more social, human-like work, less work, and then they can do what truly matters, and truly staying closer to. I feel like as a human, we're not like machines to just write code all the time or do all these things all the time. And do more creative and all the stuff. But then so there is this change that people have to adapt, right? And of course, the incentive system, education curriculum, everything has to be sort of revamped to incorporate this kind of thing. The third aspect is a possibility of like driverless car, in the sense that like in driverless car, even though there has been a big market, but things have not gone the way we wanted it to go. Like people have, there are some restrictions. Like for example, can we think of deploying a driverless car in an Indian street? Probably not, right? Because of the lot of uncertainty of um, you know there are some technical limitation that has kept driverless car from truly replacing drivers. You know, or even where the places driverless car is operating, there are humans always, who are like tracking where the car is going. If required, they come and try to fix anything. So those things are happening. So I don't. So I think the human profile, human role is going to change. And at this stage, I feel the net positive is because people who are creative, people who are really curious and not just want to do stuff for just like machine. I think they are going to be incentivized the most. Like product managers are going to be powerful, creative people, innovative people, and I think that is where humans, our mind is curious, right? We're supposed to think, and that's the beauty of nature. Like explore different stuff, not just keep on doing the same thing repeatedly again and again. Let machines do that because that's what they're optimized for. So I feel there is this, and again, I also feel it's all of our responsibility. People who are not only at the frontier labs doing these experiments or doing this building these models, but also common public to create awareness that it's not to replace humans, it's to augment humans. It's not there, nothing to worry about, but you need to sort of know about these things to be able to use them appropriately.
Yeah, so I remain optimistic, but like I mentioned, I mean, we were like the goal was promised that people would be doing the creative jobs, but there are no, I mean, there won't be creative jobs with these text to video models and text to image models. And then you spoke about autonomous vehicles, and then there's this startup. I mean, a shout out to Swayat Robots, somebody who I'd interviewed, Sanjeev Sharma. They're building an autonomous vehicle, and their goal is to build level 5 autonomous vehicle. And he said that there should be something by 26 or 20. I mean, that's what I mean. The last one I had the conversation, and they are growing very very rapidly. Their innovation stack is growing very. Then there is this DeepSeek, this Chinese company, the DeepSeek model V3. I mean, people thought that maybe restricting chips would maybe inhibit their growth, but look at that. They've kind of figured out that maybe inference training is the way to go with mixture of expert transformer based models, and they've done it at an extraordinarily low cost, at 5 million, I believe. So I think, I mean, there are people innovating, and we are constantly pushing the border, and this global race of getting AGI. I don't know which approach would get us to AGI. Would it be like the brain inspired? The people who are neuroscientists and who believe that maybe the brain inspired AI would be the way to go, or maybe just data in data out with these large language models. Don't really know what could be the approach, but I think we are racing really really fast, and that the consequence of it also is I don't really know whether we completely understand, because I do believe that augmentation is the way to go, where we let these AI augment us, maybe these brain computer interface. I'm vested in virtual reality, so we are constantly pushing the technology itself. It's called virtual reality because we are mimicking the physical world, and we're creating these virtual worlds, and the more we kind of build it, I'm in my head I'm thinking, how long is it? Maybe like 20 years, 15 years, where we could be building these virtual worlds which will be indistinguishable from reality. So what happens in a world like that? Because my son, who's 10 years old, he is in a virtual school. His friends are all virtual. So I think instead of going outwards, we are going more inwards. We are going back into like the computer, because there's this excellent theory called transcension hypothesis by John Smart, which says that we come out of the big bang. Because I mean, it is something which I've never been able to wrap my head around, that how did we come out of a tiny atom which is millions and millions times, possibly maybe smaller than a strand of hair. And when the atom kind of burst, it came out, and it gave us everything: the star, sun, moon, universe. And so his hypothesis is that with the miniaturization of technology, we are going back into the atom. And somehow, because I've been invested in virtual reality, I see that future. Because I'm not so very sure whether you've seen these series called Black Mirror. So Black Mirror, I believe, are like almost like documentary of the future, because whatever they have shown is coming real. So yes, I'm so very optimistic and positive about this tech, because these tech stack can maybe truly give us understanding of who we are, when we augment, we get, when these machines possibly augment us and maybe open up our mind. Because today I think we are all going inwards. We are more divisive. we are more sad, we are more, because we've got more money, but we are more sad, more depressed, and we are all racing to nowhere. Every country wants to be a global leader, and it's to each its own. Nobody is going together. I hope that we all go together, because the way, or the route where we are going, I think we are going towards a destructive future. Because if it's a centralized approach of these beautiful tech, I think we'll go into a place where which will not be good for any one of us. What advice do you have for young researchers or entrepreneurs here in India in the space of AI? And if you can talk about any of your current research.
Yeah, so the advice is simple. Be curious. I think if you are curiosity driven, things automatically follow. I want to mention one incident that um, I've gone to multiple IITs to give talk and interact with students. And recently, I see this trend. There is not much exposure. So what happened is I feel like the IT market is pretty good right now in India, and they get a good job. I mean the placement, and there is and that seems like more than enough to to have a good life, and that is like very tempting. You just take the job. Why to do higher study, or why to even go out, or why to learn, why to even think of doing something different. And but I think the thing is probably there is a lack of exposure. People even don't know how the researcher life is, and that is I'm talking about like top IITs where we expect people to be really at the top of the mount. I think we need this exposure. So that exposure might not be in the local university, may not be a local school, local college, but the internet gives us, and the podcasts like this, many of these podcasts gives us access to all these resources. So I think know the true capability, and we humans are by default curious and creative. Don't restrict yourself to the the environment you have been put in, and just like you said, don't end up being machines sitting in front of other machines. Be human, and I think yeah, that's the best advice I'd like to give.
Right. So my last question to you. Uh, we are all here for a reason. This reason is something that I've been, deeply trying to kind of find out what is it, what is your reason, and what is that moonshot that you're going for, because I see that, a lot of these students who, brilliant students, end up just chasing money, and then they end up in a space where they're not happy with themselves, they are not happy with their life. So I think finding that reason, that thing that ticks your curiosity, and going after that, I think makes a beautiful life. It makes you content, and you add so much to the world and the society, and you leave the world a better place. What is that reason, and what is that nature of yours?
For me, it's understand the universe. It's sort of like it's not like I chose it. It just happened. Like I mentioned, it's something I want to do. It's been doing for like how long? Probably 15 years or probably more. Trying to that the idea of theory of everything, or to understand the law of universe, because there's a belief system. There's a belief that says things are connected. Things cannot be different, otherwise this big world cannot operate. There is this strong belief, right? But then what is that thing? There's some sparks, but I don't have full clarity. And that curiosity, and it's sort of something, you feel something, you visualize something, but you can't sort of like prove it, or you can't make something concrete to be beneficial to the humanity, like to come up with something, some kind of method, technology, or something that can help to solve many of this unsolved problem. For example, more than this, creativity or like writing email, this kind of problem, you should think of solving cancer or many of this healthcare problem. People have There's so many real world problems in the world, right? We should try to solve those kind of problems. Um, but my motivation has been, if I at least to you know satisfy my curiosity, I want to understand the law of the universe. And I think I have a strong belief. I also believe in this law of attraction. I don't know if you have seen that law of attraction and then manifestation and all those
Right.
things. So I constantly, you know, visualize and manifest that at some point we'll be able to figure out what is that law that governs this universe, and that is going to open up probably completely different kinds of application. That would be probably a new AI or something like that, but that would be something really cool.
Swaroop, thank you so much for taking time and being part of the podcast. Wish you the very best. You are an inspiration because you have shown that anything is possible if you work hard, and your mantra is awesome, which is look outside of the books. It's not just the books, there's so much out there the world has to offer. What you need to do is keep on being curious and asking the big questions, and that's done great to you, and I'm sure this mantra will do great to the listeners if you take that information. So thank you once again for taking time and being part of the podcast. And to my listeners, if you like what you see in here, then please press the subscribe button, because we cannot do it without you subscribing yourself. Thank you, thank you, thank you, sir. Really appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.